Good afternoon, everyone. Please, can you mute your microphone till the starting of the webinar? Thank you. Dr. Nachoua, good afternoon. How are you? Can you please start testing your microphone?
Yes. Good afternoon, sir. How are you? You're fine?
Fine, thank you.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Sihem, we hear you.
Very nice.
Is Dr. Belfar here? Madam
Yes,
Belfar?
I'm here. Yes.
Okay, great. And Dr. Salem?
Yes, I'm here.
Dr. Kichou? Dr. Kichou?
I think she hasn't joined yet.
Okay, so we should wait.
Yeah.
What about the participants? Are they here?
Yeah, actually, I'm everybody. This is
Good
Rhoda.
evening, Rhoda. How are you?
Hello. Yes, hello.
Please, I will ask all participants to activate their cameras, please.
So here we have Dr. Suhaila Gaboob is here. Rhoda is here. Louis is here.
Amira is here as well.
Yeah, what about the others? We still have Malika, Dr. Malika. Aisha is here. Zainab is here. I think all the participants are here, except Dr. Malika.
Yeah, Dr. Zainab is here.
Yes, good evening.
I think we are able now to start.
Yeah.
Is Dr. Hanen Kichou here?
No. She didn't join. I'm going to send her a message right now. Amira Abdel Qadir, is she here?
Yes.
Well, it's Amira bin Abdel Qadir. Hi, nice to see you all.
Thank you, Amira. Thank you, my dear. Okay.
Dr. Kelkoula? Can you hear me? We can't hear you. We can't hear you. Your microphone is not activated. Your microphone.
Do you hear me now?
Now we can hear you, yes.
Yes.
I think you have now about 28 participants who are
Yeah.
all online. Would you like to start?
The problem is that Dr. Kichou is not here, and she's going to be moderating the session.
No,
I can
she's
see her.
here. She,
I can see her. She's there.
She
Okay,
joined.
great.
Under the name Getaf.
Yeah, so we can start. Yes.
I will
Yes.
start. Right. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Algeria for the first international webinar entitled Multilingual Education, Creating Effective Learning Environments. I am Dr. Belfar Boubaya Nassera from Mohammed Lamine Debarine University, Sétif 2 in Algeria. Today, February the 3rd, 2023, is our honor on behalf of all the participants in this webinar and in my own name to thank Dr. Hammar Sharhan and Dr. Karim Aish, the presidents of the Democratic Arabic Center based in Berlin in Germany, in collaboration with the University of Benghazi, Libya. Our thanks are extended to all the staff members for the great work they do and the encouragement of scientific events such as today's one. We welcome you all and we greet the participants, wishing them a great communication in today's first international webinar, Multilingual Education, Creating Effective Learning Environments. Our workshop organizer is Dr. Kelkoula Nachoua, and Dr. Salem Sihem will give a welcoming speech. Both of them, as well as Dr. Kichou, who will be the moderator, are committed to professionalism in learning and teaching in higher education. Dr. Kelkoula Nachoua is an associate professor of English at the University of Mohammed Lamine Debarine, Sétif 2 in Algeria. She holds a PhD degree in linguistics and language contact from the University of Oran in Algeria, Wahran. Her main research interests are multilingualism, bilingualism, translingual, culture, language acquisition, and foreign language skills. She's a reviewer in national and international journals in Algeria and in Berlin. She took part in different national and international conferences in Jordan, Tunisia, Germany, and at the US Embassy. Dr. Sihem, who will give in the welcoming speech, is also a teacher at of English at Sétif 2 University, the same university. She holds a PhD from the Department of Education at the University of York and an AHEA fellowship certificate. She studied pre-sessional courses for academic English and research skills at Canterbury Christ Church University. She participated in many national and international conferences in the UK and Germany. Her research interests include language education, global citizenship education, teacher education, critical pedagogy, and experimental learning. I shall now leave the ground to Dr. Kelkoula Nachoua to introduce Dr. Kichou, who will be the moderator. I will stay with you listening to your precious participations. I will come back at the end of this work session to give a concluding word on the first international webinar, Multilingualism Education, Creative Effective Learning Environments. Dear colleague, Dr. Kelkoula Nachoua, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor, for this warm introduction. Thank you so much for your unconditional support and encouragement, and for according us your time and be here with us on this Friday. Words cannot explain adequately how eternally grateful I am to you. You're just an amazing person and a true blessing to all of us. Sorry, I will. Yeah.
You are most welcome, my dear.
Thanks once again.
Welcome.
A very
anytime.
good morning to all of you gathered here. Dear colleagues, teachers, lecturers, researchers, students, distinguished guests, attendees, and Facebook followers, I welcome you all to this first international webinar entitled Multilingual Education, Creative Effective Learning Environments. First, I would like to express my gratitude to Dr. Salem, the organizer of this webinar, and Dr. Kichou, who is going to be moderating the session, for their hard work and commitments. Without your help, ladies, this would never happen. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for always being extremely supportive. I would like also to extend a special warm thank you to our distinguished keynote speakers who accepted to take part in this event. Dr. Zainab Abu Sama from Saudi Arabia, Dr. Aisha Chiftisi, I wish I spelled your name correctly, from Turkey, Dr. Rauda Al-Muktaf from Syria, Miss Louise Shepherd from England, Dr. Amira bin Abdel Qadir from my former university, Frère de Montouri Constantine, Dr. Suhaila Gebgoub from Jijel University, and last but not least, Dr. Melika bin Hassan from Iran University. Please, before we start, I would like to remind the speakers to stick to their time. And for the attendees, if you have any questions or comments, please drop them in the chat box, or you just wait until we start the discussion or the debate. You may unmute your microphones and ask whatever you want. Without taking more of your time, I will conclude the speech by wishing good luck to everyone. And I'm so excited to know all of the new faces during this webinar. Now I invite my colleague, Dr. Salem, to give her speech. Then we start directly with the presentations. Thank you, everyone. And Dr. Salem, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nachoua. Good afternoon, everyone, and a very big welcome to you all to our today's webinar. I'm enormously honored and pleased to be with you today to discuss one of the most critical topics in our today's world, which is multilingualism. So we are living in a multilingual world, and this is obviously reflected in our classrooms. Talking about Algeria, for example, Algeria is in itself a multilingual country. And of course, how can we seize the opportunity of having a multilingual classroom to create or to set effective and fruitful learning environments for our students? To discuss such a critical and very important question, we have invited a number of brilliant and lovely scholars and researchers in the field. So a huge thank you to you all for accepting to take part in this webinar and share with us your knowledge, your studies, your findings, and your opinions on the topic. Big thank you also to the Democratic Arab Center for granting us this opportunity to meet today and discuss one of the important topic in our critical time. It's our great honor to have Dr. Belfar with us today. Thanks also, Nachoua, for organizing this workshop with me. Massive thanks to the audience as well who are with us either on Zoom or on Facebook. So please feel free to ask any question either by writing it in the comments or in the chat box. And hopefully one of us will be reading it, or you can ask it directly to the speakers at the end, of course, of their presentations. A big thank you as well to Dr. Hanen Kichou, who is moderating this webinar. So Dr. Hanen is an associate professor of higher education departments of English, language and literature at Mohammed Lamine Dabaghi City 2 University in Algeria. So she's been teaching for more than 12 years, and she received her PhD in applied linguistics and foreign language teaching from the University of City 2. Her primary research involves academic writing, genre and discourse analysis, language planning and policy, professional development and technology integration in learning. So, of course, she has moderated and participated in many national and international conferences. Thank you very much all for your time once again, and I wish you all the best for the speakers. And now I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Hanen Kichou. Could you just unmute yourself, please? Yes, perfect. No, we can't hear you.
Dr. Hanen, would you please unmute your microphone?
Maybe try to remove your headsets, please. Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
All right.
Good luck.
Okay. So, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on the time region. Okay, we may live in different places in the world. So, first of all, I would like to welcome everyone to this international workshop under the title of Multilingualism Education, Creating Effective Learning Environment, which is organized by my dear colleagues, Dr. Sihem, Salem, and Dr. Nachoua, Kelkoula. So thank you so much for this event, and thank you as well for giving me the opportunity to moderate and host this event. My thanks also go to our presenters, okay, who accepted, to join the workshop from different places of the world. We have the UK, we have Turkey, we have Syria, Algeria, okay, and many other countries. So thank you so much. My sincere thanks also go to the audience who accepted kindly, definitely, to attend and join this workshop with us. I hope it will be as fruitful and informative. So thank you so much. So shall we immediately start with the speakers, Nachoua and Sihem?
Yes, Hanen.
All right. So without any further ado, let me start with the first presenter for today, who is Dr. Zainab, I think, Abu Sammaq, right? Did I pronounce the name well?
Yes.
Yeah, that is correct.
Are you there, Zainab?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So Dr. Zainab Abu Sammaq is going to present about the role of English as a lingua franca in multilingual education learning programs. So Zainab Abu Sammaq is an international consultant in language education, multilingualism. She's currently a strategic advisor in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. She has a vast regional and international experience as a linguist and education expert in Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the USA. She earned her PhD in multilingual and multicultural education from Florida State, USA. She worked as an assistant professor at HU, a government university, definitely, which is located in Zarqa, Jordan. And she spent a decade there in this university. So she taught and designed many courses in the English language department and curriculum and instruction department. And she was the director of international affairs and assistant dean at College of Arts, an academic advisor and curriculum designer. She was a pioneer establishing in an entrepreneurship club in 2009 in collaboration with Queen Rania Center in 2011, and a founder of a program which is titled Launchpad for Young Entrepreneurs. So she volunteered as a mentor and academic advisor with many youth, language and educational and regional international organizations. And she is certified TOT or TOT trainer and an EFL specialist. And interestingly, she's a Toast master. Okay, so back to you, Dr. Zainab Abu Samar, you can start.
Hello,
Zainab?
everyone. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I will say my hi, first of all, to every one of you. Unfortunately, I broke my laptop this morning, so I will not be able to share my presentation. So allow me to read it, if that's okay with you.
All right, that's all right, Zainab.
Sure. So the title of my presentation is about the role of English as a lingua franca in multilingual language learning education programs. And multiculturalism and multilingualism in the 21st century society and education is a positive phenomenon and needs to be encouraged and supported. The world has always been multilingual, and the ways that we develop language learning and teaching success must take the multilingual realities of the world into account. I do not believe that English alone is not enough. So when we talk about multilingualism and English as a lingua franca, this affected the language learning as well as the language teaching, taking into account the globalization that's happening around the world. In this presentation, I'm going to be discussing the definition of lingua franca as well as the definition of multilingualism. We're going to be talking about the impact on education and the language learning and teaching, and how we can come up with, let's say, a paradigm view of how this can be affecting the new generation of teachers as well as learners. So let's start with multilingualism. What is one striking feature of globalization is the impact of multilingualism and the related. Is my voice clear?
Yes, it is, Zainab.
Okay. The related phenomena of multiculturalism. There is a few contemporary societies that can be considered homogeneous. They are only have one language, especially taking into account the new events of the 21st century, a lot of migration, a lot of multilingual communities happening even in the Europe, Asia, as well as the United States. So if we're going to define multilingualism, it would be speaking, as David Crystal, definitely he is the, the father of multilingualism and the lingua franca. He said, speaking two or more languages is the natural way of life for 3/4 of the human race. This principle has been obscured in parts of Europe as a consequence of colonial history. We urgently need to reassert it and to implement it in practical ways. For in the modern world, monolingualism is not a strength, it's a handicap. So in one sense, it might be thought that linguistic diversity is in decline. Some languages are dying out, and some are spoken by smaller numbers of people. And there are linguists who believe that the rise of English is accelerating this trend as a lingua franca around the world. However, one estimate suggests that there are still over 7,000 distinct languages spoken by substantial populations as their first or mother tongues, and many more countries than is commonly known need to operate in multiple languages. At the same time, the rise in identity politics across the world appears to be supporting a renewed sense of confidence in multilingualism with respect to local, regional, and national languages, in addition to the recognition of English as a lingua franca for work, employment, trade, and technology. There is a distinct relationship between the new economy, the new forms of communication, and the role of English as a lingua franca. According to Manuel Castell, the new economy has three salient features. There is a new economic processes which generate information. There is economic production, which takes on a global scale of organization. And finally, the competition, which is organized in network and that are located globally. When we talk about local communication and global interaction, there is an economic process which allocates decision-making responsibilities to more local zones of production. This is found in the technologies that are used to facilitate communication by using English as a lingua franca. For example, we could say electronic communication takes over the airwaves in 1990. There was no World Wide Web. It arrived in 1991. Most people did not send their first emails or even exchange messages, but now it's a common thing to use English as a lingua franca to blog, to tweet, to TikTok, or use the other social platforms. If David Crystal, I'm quoting David Crystal here, he said, if someone had said to me in 2005 that the next EMC development was going to be a system where you were given an online prompt, what are you doing, and a limit of 140 characters for your reply, I would have written them off as deluded. He is definitely referring to Twitter. And when he speaks about EMC, he's talking about the electronically mediated communication. This is the abbreviation EMC stands for. So if the new economy enables the proliferation of multilingual communication, it is also greatly encourages and in turn facilitating the development of English as a lingua franca. Most observers now agree that English has effectively become that lingua franca and that it is uprising and in a much unprecedented in world history. There is also, of course, a debate about why this has happened and to what extent it's going to be affecting the other language. Without stepping into this discussion about the other languages, we will just need to acknowledge the reality that English is the lingua franca that can be found everywhere, and the globalization happening around the world at a larger level, whether it is a surface level or a deeper level, is with economic pressures as well as politics, strategic education, plans. It all helps creating the English position as a lingua franca. When we're gonna define multilingualism, there are so many tricky definitions for that. This term can be applied to people who have competencies in a number of languages or to places where many languages are used. This definition is used by the Council of Europe. Or it could be multilingualism, referring to the presence in a geographical area, large or small, where more than one variety of a language is spoken. For example, the mode of speaking of a special group, whether it is formal, recognized as a language or not. In such an area, individuals may be monolingual, speaking only their own variety. So multilingualism sometimes is seen as invisible, even in greater multilingual cities where a large numbers of languages are used, for example, as in London or in Turkey. However, it is interpreted that when a population who know one or use one or more national languages, plus one or two major languages learned at school, we can describe this community or this setting for language learning as multilingual. Now, when we look at multilingualism in the 21st century, why is it important, and why do we speak now about multilingualism in such reinforced manner? Because the reality is that most cities around the world would like to portray themselves as multilingual cities. It adds to their presence as economic and cultural cities. For example, we could say the cities like Johannesburg in South Africa or Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, they proclaim that they are multilingual, multicultural cities in which people can speak many languages, as well as they can communicate using English as a lingua franca. I'm seeing some people typing some questions, but I will not be able to answer them until I finish my presentation. So please forgive me if I did not attend to them now. Is that okay?
That's okay, Zainab.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
We'll give like a few minutes after you finish your presentation for a Q&A, okay? Just like 4 to 5 minutes. Is that okay with you, Zainab?
Sure, no problem.
Okay.
Now we move to the second part of my presentation, was talking about the English as why English now is becoming very fundamental for the global language. And even without saying why, I think everyone can talk about history, politics, many factors. But in linguistic investigations or research, we were always curious about the role that English is taking as a global language. And the concept of English as a global language opens the door of the world through which people interact with each other. Because as I said before, it is part of the technology, commerce, politics. Richards, for example, argues about the fact that English has become the major language in communication because it provides for the high level of interconnectedness among nations, local economics, and culture. English plays its crucial role in communication because of the globalization demand. There are also implications for educational policy in several countries, including English as an obligatory subject. When Dr. Nachoua introduced me, she said, I work in Saudi Arabia, but I am Jordanian. And in Jordan, for example, if I'm going to quote this, English is a mandatory to be learned from first grade, as well as Arabic as a native language. So we can say that English is becoming at the same rank as Arabic in Jordan. I think this is also the case in many other Arab countries and around the world. There is a lot of criticism, however, about this ranking of English. And some people can say it could, in a way, on one hand, can even it can enable students to get higher scores and get better jobs and move forward in their career and in their life. It could definitely affect how they perceive their local culture and, on the long run, their identity. Now, moving to the role of teachers and how they can do that in an English setting. The use of terminology of English as a lingua franca, ELF, has become popular among many countries. It appears after English is known and used as a global language. Many linguists have become aware of the effect of English as a global language in many aspects of human life. For example, Sedhofer defines English as lingua franca as a language that is used as a medium of communication among the speakers in which English is not their first language. So they use English as a medium of communication as a choice to share ideas. They use English as an option because they come from the different linguistic background. Added to this, it was argued that English has become a lingua franca since the interlocutors are coming from different cultural background. I think the way that we are using it here in this conference also shows that if we may speak our dialects, we may have some miscommunication, but it would be definitely safer to use one language, which either classical Arabic or English. It was also quoted that English as a lingua franca is used widely in many different domains, as I just mentioned before. To be more specific, Jenkins uses the term English as lingua franca in relation to direct pronunciation elements in communication. It could be including the consonant sounds or stressing, and sometimes using some what we call code switching between the national language or the native language, as well as the use of English.
Yes, Dr. Zainab?
Yeah, I'm just there's a missing there's a missing slide and I'm looking for it. Okay. Now, one of the things that when we go back to the I think we all agree about that English and the role it has it is said the reality is shown that most clearly by the language choices being made across the world, that many educational systems will choose English as the language of teaching as well as the language of instruction, and which affects the way the curriculum is based when it comes to educational policy. When a representative group of students from mainland, for example, Europe, they say were interviewed in 2010. This is a study done by King in 2010. The dominant role of English was for them beyond the question. They all agreed that English is definitely an important language. It is the language that all pupils have to learn. Worldwide, it has been estimated that some 2 billion people, which is basically 1/3 of the human race, are learning English. In China and India, it is described by many observers as being in competition to invest in the teaching and learning of English. And English is said to be the first foreign language in 100% of the secondary curricula, including in countries that have been also supposed to that have been opposing the US manipulation, such as, for example, Iran or Russia. There are so many major initiatives about using English as the language of instruction in higher education, as well as in the rise of establishing of international schools, IB system in the MENA area and around the world. It has a considerable effect on the university level provision, influenced undoubtedly by the role of English as also a vehicle of research in higher education. English dominating university ranking. These university rankings favor universities in which English language as the language of research as well as the language of instruction in comparison to other European languages, for example, French or German. The effect of this on the university sector has been making English as a major vehicle for the transmission of advanced knowledge in the fields of science and in fields of technology. When it comes to the paradigm shift in the English language learning from the traditional English as a foreign language, we no longer speak of that as English as a foreign language. English now is becoming English as ELF, English as a lingua franca. And it is part of the language education policy in many countries that I have been working, and it has been mentioned in my bio. There is fairly what we call a global English curriculum now that has been applied in the international schools as well as being enforced in colleges, especially when we talk about the preparation year that is becoming a mandatory in many colleges in the Gulf countries as well as in the Levant area. I'm not sure about North Africa, but definitely you can enlighten me about this if this English is mandatory to learn and reach what we call average level, intermediate level in communication skills, speaking listening, reading, and writing before I mean the students in universities will move up into their major and their specialization. Many observers also have been commenting on the changing of the objectives of English language learning. The current practices gives primacy to language not as just the acquisition of language, but now it is English language in use because of its role in employability, and it is always linked to essential soft skills as communication, teamwork, creative thinking, presentation skills, as well as many others. There is definitely, as I mentioned, there is an entrance requirement for university based on the level of English proficiency. And the consequences of all of this is the tendency to begin teaching it in primary schools, to include teaching part of the curriculum in English at secondary level, and at the very least, to expect university students to be able to access information and knowledge in English. The new expectations for English, the relationship between age and expected levels of proficiency in English around the world has shifted. In the past 30 years, there was the level of, or the age of English language proficiency was connected to teenagers as well as to adults. In the recent research indicates that it's not the case anymore. It is even toddlers have this high proficiency of English language in parallel to their native language, because they learn it at KG, they learn it at playgrounds, they learn it from their nannies, they learn it from everything around them, especially with the changes in the social skills and entertainment business. Most of the children now are attached to their gadgets as iPads or phones or games, and it is not a surprise to notice that because it is English, most of these applications are in English, their proficiency in English is much, much higher at a younger age. So English in many countries has become not an elite language as it was before, and very specific and exclusive for groups of scientists or scholars or teachers. Now it's becoming something for all. We observed, as they say I'm quoting the Council of Europe, they are observing this phenomenon in Europe, that the knowledge of English is becoming important to succeed in life. For example, in Armenia, it is commonly said that every mother knows that for her children to succeed, they need just 3 things: computer literacy, university education, and English. And I think that is not just only the case in Armenia. I think this is the case in many countries around the world. Definitely Jordan is one of them. Saudi Arabia as well. And how much time left, Counselor?
I think Zainab.
Do I need? Am I running out of time or?
Zainab, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you. I'm saying how much time left? Do you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yes, I do hear you, Zainab.
Okay, I was just asking how much time left because I don't want to run over the time of the other speakers.
Perhaps one of the moderators of the event can tell.
Okay. So let me move to the language choices. I'm gonna just mention it now.
I just replied to reassure you that we were listening to you. Okay.
No problem. No problem.
Thanks, Zainab. I guess Kichou is not listening. So could you just sum up what is remaining in about 5 minutes, please?
Yeah, I can do that even in less than that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Now, to sum it up, we could say if an education system is to adapt the realities and the possibilities of the changing world that I just, talked about it, and there is this confusion about the identity of culture as well as the national language, politics, economy. All of this comes into play to add to the crucial status of English language as a lingua franca. In a conference that I attended recently, it was one of the concerns, as well as how can I say, it's like you cannot run you cannot run the English language, you cannot hide from the English language anymore. The English language is prominent, it is here, and it will stay as part of the languages policy. I think the only choice we have is to have it in a multilingualism setting in language learning programs, as well as in the workplace. Now, to move from a vision to action, it requires an orientation and a strategy. From what we have seen or we have observed around the world, we do need a new model for language to maintain the paradigm shift, not just only for English language, but for the other languages, in order to move from multilingualism to what we call a plurilingual and a symmetrical model, where not all languages competence needs to be the same, but they will have a ranking order based on the need and the significant role they play in the society. At the same time, we need to be understanding that language teaching and learning should no longer be compartmentalized into separate streams of language or schooling. The concept of foreign languages and immigrant languages are not anymore considered to be current terms in reality. They're gonna become a common core, which is multilingualism, and it requires a collective understanding by the part of teachers, policymakers, strategy advisors, to be able to create an integrated language policy, something which is already being developed in some countries, and hopefully it will be widespread. My final word, if all teachers are language teachers, it remains true that many are not trained to be so in a multilingual context. And I think that is the challenge we as researchers and strategic advisors, educators, scholars, linguists in the field, we need to create this smooth transfer of teachers from the academic to the reality in which English, by no doubt, is becoming the lingua franca of the world. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.
Thank you very much, Zainab. Dr. Zainab Abu Samma.
Thank you so much, Nachoua.
Thank you.
Dr. Nachoua.
Thank you. Thank you. This is Dr. Kichou Hanen, by the way.
Okay. I'm sorry. The name.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This is Dr.
Thank
Kichou.
you, Dr. Hanan.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Zainab, for this insightful and informative presentation. I think we have a couple of questions. Shall we answer them now, or we leave like a few minutes when all the speakers and the presenters present? What do you prefer, Dr. Zainab?
Whatever is convenient for you.
I think we shall move to the second presenter speaker.
Okay, so
I'm looking at the chat right now, and I'm writing down the questions just in case the chat will roll and these questions will disappear. So I will take a note of them.
This is great, Zainab. This is great.
Okay.
Thank you so much. So let's move on directly to the second presentation, the second speaker for today. She's Dr. Aisha Jipji. I hope I have pronounced your name correctly, Dr. Aisha. We can't hear you, Dr. Aisha. No, we can't hear you. I think you have to no. Can you hear me, Dr. Aisha? But we can't hear you. It's not the same thing here. So make sure you unmute your microphone or something.
Please click on the microphone logo down at left, then see the details, the settings, and change to microphone array, the first one. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Ajay, it's not working? No? No, not yet. Nothing yet.
Maybe try to restart Zoom again.
Yeah, probably you need to restart Zoom again, Dr. Aisha. So Dr. Salem and Dr. Kelkoula.
Yes, Hanen?
Shall we move on to?
Yeah, shall we move on to the next presenter, waiting for Aisha to fix the technical issue?
Yeah.
Shall we do Aisha?
Yes, move please.
All right, it's working. I think we can hear you now. Aisha? Are you there? It's gone again. I'm sorry to tell you that we can't hear you.
Aisha, we're gonna move to the next speaker and then we come back to you again while fixing your mic. Is that okay? Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aisha. Thank you so much. So move on to the next speaker. I think we have Dr. Rauda Al-Muqtaf. Did I pronounce your name correctly, Rauda?
Yeah, it's Rauda. Hello.
Rauda Al-Muqtaf. Is that it?
Al-Muqtaf. Yeah, that's it. A strange name.
Okay, it's a nice name though.
Oh, really? Thank you.
Yeah, so a few words about Rauda. Rauda is going to be presenting on raising multilingual children. That's it, Rauda. So Rauda Al-Muqtaf is a researcher in linguistics. She's the general manager of IELTS Prep. She teaches on the Institute for Teaching Language and is a trainer of trainers of IELTS International. She's an interpreter for conferences and for international organizations. So without any further ado, Aisha, Rauda, you can start. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rauda.
Yes, I want first to thank you for inviting me to this international webinar. Really, I'm looking forward to the opportunity to be in an academic discussion about multilingualism. Especially, I'm interested in this field as a researcher first and as a parent second. That is why I chose how to raise a multilingual child.
Good.
Well, yes. Okay, so I think first I want to share my screen. So please, could you please make me a host now or something so that I can share my screen?
Yes, you are able to share your screen.
Thank you.
Rauda, you can share your screen now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good. So here will be actually a PowerPoint in order to help you understand the information I want really to talk about today. Good. So, and I want actually to go back again to share my, yes, here.
Okay.
So now we can be together. Yes. Okay. Is everybody here, well, able to see the screen?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Agree. So today I chose this topic, which is how to raise a multilingual child. Why? Because I said before that I'm interested in this field as a parent first and as a researcher second. Actually, the presentation is going to take like 7 parts. The first one will be about multilingualism, and the second one will be about benefits of being a multilingual. Third one, which is again very important, myths related to multilingualism. And finally, we will move to the strategies, how to raise a multilingual child. Okay. So number one, I think Dr. Zainab has mentioned something to multilingualism as a definition. So I want in this presentation to stand by the definition of Francois Grosjean, who is a professor in psycholinguistics, and he said that a multilingual is someone who regularly uses 2 or more languages or dialects in their everyday lives. Well, if you think about it, that covers a lot of people, more than half of the world's population. Actually, note that Grosjean does not mention a certain level of fluency required to be considered bilingual or even multilingual, or even a specific number. This is an important message. As long as you use more than one language, in whichever way or whatever level, you are bilingual. And if you use more than 2 languages, you are multilingual, not to talk about the fluency or the level of proficiency. Why are we telling you this? Actually, to take pressure off you and to help you get started with the right mindset. Whatever level of fluency your child reaches in each of their languages, you are doing a wonderful job and giving them an invaluable gift. Well, why did I choose multilingualism? I'm living in a city which is a super multilingual city. In what way? You can hardly find a monolingual. Again, more than 7 languages. More than 7 languages are spoken in the city. I'm not talking about dialects. For each language will be more than 2 or 3 dialects. But talking of spoken languages, we've got 7 languages which are spoken now. That is why you can hardly find a monolingual in the city. Well, the first language is Kurdish, Ashurian, Assyrian, Armenian, Circassian, Kildanian, and finally Arabic, which is the official language of the country. Well, talking about those languages, the reasons why we do have so many languages in the city is because of historical events, and not to mention religious events. Well, moving to the second, yes. Well, maybe something's happening. Yes, good. Well, if we want to talk about benefits of being a multilingual, well, communication skills, yeah, thank you. Also, multicultural, yes. Educational success, cognitive advantages, and personality. All of them. I'm sorry because electricity actually went off. That's why, because you cannot see me. Maybe that's a problem.
That's all right.
Everything is affected. Well, I'm sorry about it. So I'm just sharing. Yeah.
No, that's okay, Rhoda. It's all right.
Yeah.
There's no problem. No worries.
Yeah. So benefits of being a multilingual, actually, in this case, there are so many benefits of being a multilingual. The first one is communication skills. Well, multilinguals are sensitive and responsive to the communications and needs of their conversation partners because they are better at taking other people's perspectives. Well, multicultural, yes, multilinguals are gifted with words of experiences instead of one. Talking about personality, yes, multilinguals tend to be more tolerant and show higher level of confidence. Cognitive advantages in educational science, yes, multilinguals tend to be more creative. They are better able to focus and have an innate talent for multitasking and abstract thinking. They perform better at tasks that require conflict management. Well, those are the benefits. Now I want to go to talk about myths about multilingualism. Well, I chose 2 myths about multilingualism, and I was shocked that one day I believed in one of them. And the first one is children, the languages that parents speak. While it is true that young children learn a great deal by listening and observing, it would be misleading to say that they automatically acquire any language they hear at home. The process of language learning, as you know, is a complex combination of beneficial factors. Getting varied, irregular exposure to a language is one important thing, but the best way to learn is to practice as much as you can and have meaningful real-life interactions. So I used to believe that children will automatically pick up the languages parents speak, but it seems it's not true. Well, the second one is that after childhood, it's no longer possible to become a fluent bilingual. Where here is a beautiful message for every parent who wants to raise a bilingual or a multilingual child. It's never too late. Many people believe that there is a point of no return around the end of childhood, which is called poverty age, after which it's no longer realistic to become fluent or native-like in a second language. But millions of people around the world are living proof that this is untrue. Well, now moving to how to choose the right strategy. You need strategy to raise your child to be multilingual or either bilingual. And at the end of the presentation, I'm going to tell you what is the strategy which is followed here in the city so that you can hardly find a monolingual or people. It's the case that you can find at least a bilingual speaker. So all people here speak more than one language, and sometimes they are multilinguals even. So once you decide that you want to raise your child to speak your language, in this case, the parent, we suppose that the parent is speaking one of the languages that he wants his child or her child to speak it. The next step is to make a plan for how to achieve this. Well, as with anything in life, to achieve a goal, you first need to define it. I mean, which language do you want your child to speak and at what fluency level? Once you've set those goals, think about the resources you have in order to achieve them. Who can speak what language in the family? How much time can each language speaker spend with the child? And the answers to those questions will help you to choose the best strategy. If I want to go to the strategies, actually, I prepared 5 strategies. And there are many other strategies, but I chose to talk about 5 strategies. I didn't want to go into details, but you will find some details for maybe next presentations, I don't know. So the first one is one person, one language. Okay, and the second one will be the minority language at home. The third one, time and place. They're all strategies. The fourth one, 2 parents, 2 languages. And the last one will be bilingual siblings or multilingual siblings. Those are the 5 strategies. And there are many other strategies, but I'm not going to talk about them today. Well, talking about the first one, which is one person, one language, it's called OPOL strategy. It means that the parents or caregivers, so if you're not speaking this language, so you need a caregiver, each different language with the child. Ideally, each person will select the language they are most comfortable with, especially in conveying feelings, and talk only this language with the child in a one-to-one situations. Well, that is for number one. Going to the second one, which is the minority language at home. With the minority language at home strategy, both parents speak the same minority language at home. In this scenario, there is a clear separation of home language and school or majority language, and the minority language becomes the family language in all situations, in one-to-one situation and when all the family is together. Well, talking about the third one, which is called the time and a place strategy. Well, the time and a place strategy, which is this one actually, focuses on an agreed schedule where the parent and children will decide to speak different languages, depending either on the time or the place, or sometimes both. This strategy can be combined with the OPOL or MLA strategy when we talked about them before, which is minority language at home or one person with language OPOL. Okay, so in which more than two languages in the family, we have actually to combine both strategies together. Again, I said I'm not going to go into details because I know I've got only short time. Well, the fourth one is two parents, two languages. Two parents, two languages strategy is usually adopted by parents who speak both languages and decide to each speak both of them with the children. Well, moving to the last one, which is, I'm sorry again. Yes. Can you see me now?
No. Rauda?
Yes.
We actually can't see you. It's still the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, okay, good. So let me now continue to the bilingual siblings. Well, if you've got only one child, so you can choose one of those strategies. Any strategy will help. But a common sibling, for example, you are planning to get a second one and you want to choose the language, then a common sibling language, which is not understood by other children, can make the bond between siblings even stronger. They have a secret language together. If the elder sibling attends school, she or he may opt the school language with her little brother or little sister. As much as parents would want to influence which language the children speak with each other, the choice is ultimately up to the children. Well, here, let me show you some details if I can. Yes. So here, one person with language, and we talked about the details. Here is also minority language at home, which is followed in here. So here you can find in the city that I live in, you can find people who are bilingual because the families depended on minority language at home. They speak the minority language at home, and when the person goes, for example, school, he will find the official language, which is Arabic in this case, and he may find some other languages. This is for the time and a place. And also here, we can find two parents, two languages at the same time. And finally, bilingual siblings. Thank you so much for your attention. I think now I can go. Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rauda. Thank you very much for this informative and captivating presentation about raising multilingual children.
I'm sorry for the electricity. I didn't know. This is my bad luck.
That's no. That's all right. No worries, Rauda.
Thank you so much for everybody.
Thank you so much, dear Rauda, for this presentation. I'm trying to, I'm raising a child, not a bilingual, but a multilingual child. And I was not raised bilingual. It was Yes, me. I'm talking about myself. I was not raised bilingual. I was just raised in Arabic, but my dad was bilingual, and they always, was super jealous of him because from a young age, I just knew what kind of opportunities being bilingual afforded. And so the reason I care so much about raising my child bilingual is because I spent my whole life learning languages, and it's hard. But children who learn other languages when they are young, it's going to be very easy with them. So like my daughter, she will grow up with 3 languages with very little effort on her part. She's going to subconsciously know all these rules and grammatical things that teenagers and adults have to learn consciously. Not to mention all of the social, emotional, cognitive benefits that come with being bilingual. Honestly, I wish more parents were obsessed with raising their children to become bilingual or multilingual.
Yes. Yeah, really, yes. And me too, actually. So we all suffered, we spent the whole life learning a new language. And we do want our children now, since you speak English, you want to teach the child to let him acquire the language from an early age. Really, I wanted to talk about the ages, when can you start teaching your child, but I know that I've got a limited time, so that I decided not to talk about the ages because it has too many details. To teach our children, to make them like bilinguals, or at least speak the language that we are able to speak it. So this is a gift.
Thank you so much, Rauda, once again.
So for anyone who has struggled to learn a second language as an adult, the speed with which young children learn language is breathtaking. So I think it's time to break the glass ceiling and start teaching your kids another foreign language.
That's true, Nachoua. I can't agree more, Nachoua and Rauda.
Yes.
I think we're going to learn more about this from Dr. Aisha Jifji, who has done her PhD on children, actually. Okay. Aisha, can you hear us now?
Yes. Hello again. Can you hear me now?
That's great. Now
please, Dr. Kichou, just one question, if you don't mind.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much.
Dr. Wafa?
Yes.
All
yes,
right,
Dr. Kichou?
Thanks for joining,
Wafa. Good afternoon, dear Dr. Kichou. Thank you so much for this interesting webinar. Though it is not my cup of tea, yet I want to learn more about multilingualism and how the children can be multilingual. Well, I'd like to thank Dr. Radwa for her amazing presentation, along with the appealing PowerPoint. I'd like to ask you, one question. What are the other strategies? You have been talking about the time, place, etc., and then you have put other strategies. I want to learn more about those other strategies to be multilingual. And my second question is, don't you think that some children are already naturally born multilingual without having all the the criterion that you have already mentioned? They are naturally born multilingual.
Yes, I do believe in the idea, because especially in here, you can find people speaking like a child speaking 4 languages. Really, 4 languages. He's innately born with this ability. So this is when you have somebody who is innately born multilingual, you are not going to suffer a lot with him at all. Yeah, because he's innately born with this ability. And I could find this, like, for example, they are being exposed to YouTube channels and other for example, places or to get the language. But concerning people who are not innately born to be multilingual, in this case, as I did with my son, actually, I all the time speak English with him, but at the end, I feel that he's not in the level of proficiency that I want. Maybe came to the conclusion that is why he is not innately born bilingual or multilingual. He doesn't have this ability. Well, I mean, talking about other strategies, well, and I didn't want to talk about them because these are the 5 important and mostly used strategies around the world. Like researchers agreed on those strategies. Multilingualism can be taken if you take at least one of them. One of them is enough. For example, especially here, if you have a minority language, like for example, one of the parents is Kurdish while the other one is Arabic, so they want the child to speak both of them. In this case, they have to choose one of the strategies. Other strategies, yes, there are other strategies which I'm not interested in because they, I think, depending on the experience of some researchers, they said that they fail in giving for example, a crucial result in how to raise a multilingual child.
Great. Thank you once again, Rauda. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hanen.
Thank you. So
I guess Amira as well is raising her hand. Maybe she has a question.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you so much for your presentation, Rauda, and for the presentation of Zainab. They are both insightful. What is interesting about both is that you are adopting 2 different perspectives. So Zainab is more leaning towards the lingua franca perspective, and Rauda is more leaning towards language acquisition perspectives. And when talking about the speed by which children learn languages, I think we should also talk about the factors and the objectives. Why this child should learn other language, and what are the circumstances under which this child is learning the language. If we take, for instance, the example of our grandparents when we were under the French colonization, they were obliged to learn French, and most of them, they mastered it. So they spoke it, they wrote it in a very proficient way. And then there are children as well who are perhaps raised by parents, and they are living in foreign countries where they don't use their parents' languages outside their homes, but they are still reluctant to use their parents' languages. So we shouldn't really say that, okay, when there are parents, when there is languages at home, so they are more likely, perhaps they are more likely to understand it in the future, but the level of proficiency is not really guaranteed. And then when we talk about the lingua franca perspective, whatever exposure to languages, whatever level of proficiency of the languages they have in their repertoires, it is an asset. It is something which is very, very positive, and we have to acknowledge it. So this is just my comment about the 2 presentations, and thank you again.
Thank you very much, Amira. Thank you very much. So I think I have to move quickly to Dr. Aishi Jifti. Once again, I think Aishi is going to give us like more insights because her PhD was conducted with children, and more precisely with bilingual children. I think Turkish English. Is that right, Aishi?
Yes, it's
so
right.
Aishi is going to be presenting on language growth in Turkish English bilingual children in the United Kingdom. A few words about Aishi, okay, before she starts. So Aishi is an academic in child development department at university in Turkey. She holds a PhD degree in education. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
Great. So I said she holds a PhD degree in education from the University of York, the United Kingdom. Her research interests focus on designing and evaluating interventions to child bilingual language development, early years education, and supplementary school. So this work has targeted children at the early age of schooling who grew up with a language different from their heritage language. Okay, she also works as a guest lecturer in 2 different universities in Turkey, and her works have been published in national and international journals and books. Aisha participated in many national and international conferences, allowing her to meet and exchange her investigations and experience with colleagues from the UK and all over the world. So Aisha, the floor is yours. You can start.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me for this great webinar conference. Today, I will talk about my recent study and mostly about my PhD thesis. It's language growth in Turkish-English bilingual children in the United Kingdom. Oops.
Yeah.
The overview of my presentation, firstly, I will tell the aim of my research questions, methodology, what I use, findings, discussion, and conclusion. The aim of this research focuses on understanding the heritage language growth of Turkish-English bilingual children in the United Kingdom. They all grow up in England, and one of their parents, their Turkish background. They have their Turkish background. The aim was to investigate the role that Turkish supplementary schools play in the language growth of 4-8-year-old bilingual Turkish-English children. The key terms of my research, heritage language, I guess most of you are familiar with key terms. Heritage language is as a minority language that exposed at home or inherited from home. Which language they speak at home or their minority background. It's generally called a mother tongue, home language, community language, and native language. The supplementary schools, heritage schools, most of the American literature, it's called heritage language schools, not the supplementary. Supplementary is usually used in England. Education run outside the mainstream school curriculum to provide knowledge of religion, culture, or heritage language of the ethnic group. It's called, and it is also known as community language school, weekend school, Saturday or Sunday schools. Background of the study, there are approximately 4 million Turkish people living as ethnic minorities in the migrant countries, mostly in Germany, Netherlands, and nowadays it's in England. In the UK, there are almost 200,000 Turkish speakers in London area, a range of ethnic groups such as Western European Turks, British Cyprus, Turkish Kurds, and Turkish people from Turkey. In order to improve and maintain those people's Turkish as a minority language, the Ministry of National Education in Turkey and Education Consultancy in London, they cooperate together to just improve and maintain their background Turkish. Research question of this study: which variables can explain performance on cross-linguistic lexical tasks and narrative tasks in Turkish of 4-8-year-old bilingual Turkish-English children? Do the Turkish language skills of the bilingual children differ depending on Turkish supplementary school attendance status, age, and parental language strategies? How do the vocabulary, narrative production, and narrative quality skills in Turkish-English bilingual children? How are vocabulary and narrative productivity skills related to each other within language? And the second question is, do parental perspectives affect the child's bilingual language learning? What are the family characteristics? What are those children's language input and practices within their home settings in Turkish and English? What is the correlation between bilingual children's performance in language skills and their home literacy environment? I used cross-sectional design. The cross-sectional design is a few groups which are different in certain variables, such as exposure of a target language. In my study, it's Turkish, but share other characteristics: their ethnicity, socioeconomic status, age, and the family background. It is purposive sampling from Turkish community in the UK. I had 41 bilingual students and their parents. All 39 parents of students, they are the same bilingual children's parents. And it was the quantitative method. I have two different samplings, bilingual children and their parents. For bilingual children, I use language tasks, cross-linguistic lexical task, and the narrative storytelling. And for the parents, I had a family language background questionnaire. Cross-linguistic lexical tasks is a picture-based vocabulary task consisting comprehension and production of nouns and verbs. And in order to measure the level of expressive and receptive vocabulary size children, each part contains 32 test items. For the noun, for example, for the first picture, when I ask where's the gate, I want children to show the gate. And for the production, I ask what is she doing? I expect children said she is crying. And for the narrative tasks, I use frog story. It's a wordless picture story. I use just one of the frog story, not the others, to understand narrative skills and the vocabulary knowledge of the student. Questionnaire to understand how other factors important to bilingual language acquisition, because it's just generally demographic and environmental information, language input of child, and the parental attitude to children's language use. Analysis of the data in order to answer research question one about the Turkish supplement. What does the Turkish supplement? Do the Turkish English by language skills of bilingual children depending on the other variables? A series of mixed ANOVA is conducted, and I conducted ANCOVAs and did some descriptive analysis. During the task, it's a cross-sectional task, but I had two different time 1 and time 2 between over the 6 months of time. For the time 1, I did the same cross-sectional tasks, and the time 2, I did the same task with children to see how their language improve between time. So it shows that even for attendees and non-attendee, their Turkish is improved during 6 months of time. So it seems, and it just explains us, supplementary schools doesn't have a big difference between non-attendee and attendee children. Verb comprehension skills in Turkish over 6 months, there was no effect of time and no interaction between time and group. A significant effect of group, their comprehension vocabulary skills have different between group, but after controlling the time 1, there was also no effect of groups. Non-comprehension skills, for the noun, there is significant effect of time and significant effect of group, but no interaction between time and group. Verb production, there is a significant effect of time. There is an improvement between time, and there is a difference between group, but after the controlling, there is no effect for the time 1. For the time 1, there is no effect, but when we get the time 2, there is a difference between group. Non-production skills, a significant effect of time and significant effect of group. After the controlling for time 1, there is no effect of the groups. In order to answer research question 1C, how are vocabulary and narrative productivity skills related to each other? To answer this question, a series of correlation and the linear regression I conducted. For the descriptive analysis, it says attendees children's total number of words is higher than the non-attendees group. Productivity skill, it's interesting, productivity skills, non-attendees children's are higher than attendees children. They're the just the important parts. For the correlation, CLTs and the narrative skills, they are all correlated to each other. For each group, they correlate to the other tests. HFX for language skills, just for productivity affected by the participant's age. In order to answer research question 2, it's the family part, family language background questionnaire, descriptive analysis, and some correlations were conducted. For the demographic characteristics, most of the parents, they have Turkish partners, but some of them, they have, children have father Turkish backgrounds, and some of them a mother Turkish background. And the children birth order by group, most of the non-attendee children are the firstborn, the attendee children are mostly secondborn. Language preferences at home. The parents' language preferences to speak with their supporters. They mostly speak only Turkish at home, and some non-attendees, they are mostly speak Turkish at home. Some of them, they just mostly speak in English. Language preferences to speak with child by group. Non-attendees children parents, they also prefer to speak only Turkish at home. Correlation between demographic data and children's language skills, and not just education is not correlated with the other language skills, but most of them, for example, group, attendee and non-attendee group, they are correlated with the comprehension and production skills in Turkish. Generally, both Turkish parents, they are not preferred to send their children to Turkish supplementary schools. And the family, they are the mixed family. And correlation between child language input and the language skills. Frequency of speaking Turkish, it's correlated between comprehension, production in Turkish, story elements, productivity, and sentence organization. Some of the language inputs, they are correlated with the children's language skills, and it's affected by the home language literacy environment. The aim of the first study was to first research question was to investigate the role Turkish supplementary schools play on language growth in Turkish of the bilingual children who attend the supplementary schools in comparison to children who don't attend. It's demonstrated in the longitudinal data, cross-sectional, but over the 6 months period of data, attendee children had weaker vocabulary knowledge on the Turkish tasks relative to non-attendee children, although it was expected that attendee children would achieve higher scores than non-attendee. It's because the language practice and input at home. Because we really expected that the attendee children, they have more input and they should have higher score than the non-attendee, but the results show that the non-attendee children, they have the higher score in Turkish. It's all because language practice and input and their families, because their non-attendee children's parents, they are both Turkish. The results indicated that children who attend the supplementary school had weaker knowledge of vocabulary skills in Turkish than children who do attend.
Dr. Ayşe?
Yes.
I'm afraid we're running out of time. So you still have a lot to share, or?
No, it's just In general, I can just say, in general, it's important the language input at home and their parents' language preferences. That's why we should ask. I'm just trying to fix the page. We should ask parents to speak mostly their home language and their heritage language at home, because in the majority country, all children, they expose the majority language. For example, in England, they have to exposure to English at school or the daily environment, but at home they should speak mostly Turkish to maintain their Turkish background. We can't ask parents to just keep talking Turkish and keep saying everything Turkish, give the Turkish grammar background. It's just even just the pronunciation and the speech would be okay. Sorry, I'm just running out of time and
I'm so sorry.
Exciting.
So sorry, Ayşe. The thing is that we still have other participants, okay? So we still have like 3 to 4 participants.
Yes.
Yeah, but I'd like to thank you, Ayşe, for the very interesting, actually, and very fruitful presentation.
Thank you. Thanks so
Okay,
much.
thank you so much. Thank you. So I have to move on quick. Yeah, I have to move on quickly to Ms. Louise Shepherd. Are you there, Louise?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Louise.
Great.
Good. So, Louise, you will be presenting on visual distinction or distraction, the influence of written input on learning difficult L2 sounds for L1 Arabic learners of L2 English. So a few words about Louise. Louise Shepherd is an applied linguistics PhD researcher in the Department of Education at the University of York. She's also an associate lecturer in the Department of Education at Leeds Beckett University. So her PhD focuses on the influence of written language on second language phonological development in adult language learners. In particular, she's interested in the influence of literacy experience across different writing systems of language learning. This research draws together academic experience in the field of developmental psycholinguistics and a decade of English language teaching experience in the UK, Spain, and Jordan. She has also published work exploring the practical and ethical implications of conducting online research with underrepresented language learners. So, Louise, without any further ado, you can start. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really great to be here. So, moving on from talking predominantly about child language acquisition, I'd like to kind of go back to talking about adult language acquisition a little bit, and literacy across writing systems, and how we draw on our multilingual language and literacy experience as learners. Make sure. Okay, cool. And so the reason why this is interesting is, in comparison to children who, generally speaking, are fluent oral language users before they become literate, adults in most classroom settings, or if they're learning languages on apps, or many of these kind of instructed environments, are exposed to written language and oral language simultaneously from day one of language acquisition. And this is interesting because we know from research into child language learning that as you become literate, this has a really big impact on your phonological development and your phonological awareness. And we notice with adult language learners that accent, pronunciation, perception of different sounds are particularly difficult. So this research is related to try and understand if literacy is a contributing factor to that. So some people say that seeing words written down can be really useful, particularly when you've got sounds that are difficult to perceive or don't exist in your first language, that being able to see it written down can help you to differentiate what you can't hear. However, there's actually quite a lot of research that says that there are many points of non-target language and interference and first language transfer that can be quite unhelpful, and that you have to kind of inhibit as you're learning languages. This depends on what the writing system is like. So if you're learning English as a Spanish speaker, then maybe you're going from quite a transparent writing system to a more inconsistent or opaque writing system like English, or maybe you're going across writing systems like Arabic learners of English. Currently, there's not very much research looking at what happens across languages that have different scripts. This is increasing, but it's still quite a kind of preliminary field at the moment. So this is my PhD work that's contributing to that knowledge. As a bit of an example, so if you are, maybe you might relate to this as Arabic speakers, it might be different as we have a lot of people here from who speak North African varieties and have high proficiency in French and other European languages, but the f-v contrast can be really tricky. And so it might be the case that if I say fan or van, that might be difficult to differentiate, but if you see it written down, that it can help you, okay, we're talking about the vehicle van. Just to give a comparison across different languages and how that relationship might differ. If you were a Spanish speaker, seeing the written word like that is likely to activate the Spanish word that is spelled the same way, but pronounced van, which means they go. So this is just to show how written input, especially when you're trying to learn a new word and you're drawing on all of this information at once, how it can influence the way you're processing and encoding that new information. So my research questions in particular are, in my experimental task, which I'll tell you a bit more about in a second, do Arabic learners of English encode the f-v contrast in new words? Does exposure to written input influence their accuracy? So I looked at the influence of both English and Arabic spelling, with the prediction that if Arabic learners of English would see the spelling in English, then that would help them to distinguish sounds that they might find difficult to perceive just through hearing. And then the prediction would be that the Arabic spelling would be unhelpful and would encourage the assimilation of the two different sounds in English to a single contrast. But what I'm also really interested in are what are participant beliefs or learner beliefs about the influence of written input. My experience as a language teacher is that people feel very strongly about seeing things written down, and we want to draw on all of the knowledge that we have about the world, and literacy is a massive part of how we've learned to learn. So I'm interested in how that influences the way that people approach new word learning and whether it actually matches up with people's performance as well. And then how do people's beliefs relate to the language learning strategies that they actually used in the study? And do these different strategies influence their performance? Does it improve their accuracy? So this is the stimuli that I had for my experiment, and I'm going to run you through a few more details. So I had 114 Arabic speaking adult learners of English who varied in their proficiency, and they participated in my study from all over the world, actually, and maybe there might be people here who participated, so that would be interesting. And then there's 118 English-speaking adults with no Arabic experience who functioned as a control group, so I could make sure that the experiment worked and was possible, and testing the things that I wanted to test. And you can see here the stimuli were 12 bisyllabic English pseudo words, so it's quite an artificial way of exploring some of these questions. But all of these words differed either by the f-v distinction or by the nasal m-n distinction. That was so that we had a difficult and an easy contrast, so that we could compare like perceivability and how important that was. And you can see that 4 of the words were presented with the English spelling underneath, 4 were presented with the Arabic spelling underneath, and then 4 were presented without any written language. So that we could have that comparison as well. And you can see that fadit and vadit, for example, were spelled identically in Arabic, whereas famis and vamis were had the distinction in the spelling there. This gives you a bit of an overview of the procedure. So it was within subjects design, everybody participated in exactly the same experiment. It was single session online using Gorilla Experiment Builder. And we're going to be focusing on the audio-visual matching task that's here in the kind of the pink. So people went through a learning phase where they learnt the 12 items. And the thing that we're mostly interested in is how did they do on this task where they had to see a picture, hear one of the words that they'd already learned, no writing, and And could they differentiate between famis and vamis, for example? So they had to look at the picture, hear the word and say, yes, that matches, or no, that doesn't match. And that was always with minimal pair differences. And then there was a debrief questionnaire as well, where we explored beliefs and strategies about what happened in the study. And then I'm going to tell you a bit now about the analysis and the findings, which used mixed methods approaches. So there were mixed effects models used for people's performance, and then qualitative content analysis to look at beliefs and strategies. And then this was looked at kind of quantitatively, comparatively, using principal component analysis and linear regression. So in terms of people's performance, accuracy was significantly worse for words that differed by FB. So we can have a look in the top corner here where we've got the kind of turquoise box here. So this was the L1 Arabic speakers, and you can see the English for a bit of comparison. And with the FB words, generally speaking, performance was lower. If we look at the other graph down below, these lines here all vary by proficiency, and we saw that proficiency was one of the main predictors, that as proficiency increased, so did accuracy, and this happened across all different types of conditions. And there was also the effect that accuracy was better with English spelling compared to Arabic spelling. But the thing that was really interesting, that was the case across all of the words. But when we looked specifically at the FE words and the difficult contrast words, then we saw that accuracy was worse with any written input. So again, looking at the turquoise box here, we can see both English and Arabic were below chance in their accuracy levels, and actually lower than when they hadn't seen any written input. And then we looked at that a bit more closely in relation to proficiency, and we can see that when there was no written input, the high proficiency learners were starting to be able to differentiate. The red line here is the difficult FE words. Whereas when we look at the Arabic spelling and the English spelling, we can see that actually even the highest proficiency learners still struggled to perform above chance with the difficult FB words. And we can see how this is different from the easy to perceive contrast. So this is some further evidence that written input is of limited help, specifically when we're talking about difficult to perceive contrast. And this has been related to hypotheses about distraction and the fact that you don't necessarily attend sufficiently to the kind of phonetic differences and the specific details because you see it written down and you think you've got it, when actually it's quite hard to reflect and know whether or not you have all the information that you need. So I wanted to look at how this related to people's beliefs about what had happened in the study and about language learning in general. And looking at these two kind of pictures here, these are both kind of visualizations of the qualitative analysis and how people responded to does seeing the written form help. So the first one was about, does written input help in the study? Everything in blue is people saying it helps, and then for some reason. So it helps remembering, connecting audio and visual input, it helps learning, clarifying what I heard. And then the orange is the number of people who say it doesn't help. So there were a small number of people who said it was distracting or it's better to focus on the sounds. But it's very, very clear that people generally felt like seeing the written form really helped. And quite a lot of people said that it helped them with the FB contrast. And then when asked about learning generally outside of the experiment, is it important to see the written form the first time you learn a new word? Again, we see in blue, overwhelmingly people think it's very important that you see the written word the first time you are exposed to it. And then there's a small number of people who are a bit more skeptical or more cautious because of distraction, because spelling is inconsistent with pronunciation. But yeah, we see quite a low amount of reference to that. So that's really interesting because that doesn't really reflect necessarily what we saw in the task. And so I've got a few quotes here, but I think because of time, I'm going to skim past them. But if you would like to see what people kind of mentioned in the experiment, I can either go back to it or I can share my slides. I'm going to go past the quotes and look at strategies. So strategies generally drew on people's existing knowledge of sound letter correspondences, and it wasn't necessarily to do with the fact that they'd seen it in the experiment or not. And that was really interesting because in psycholinguistic experiments, people very rarely ask people their perspective on what happens or to reflect on things. And here we can see, oh, people are going beyond what they're exposed to in the experiment, which is not surprising, but people don't really talk about that. So what people's quotes, and we'll look at a couple of them in a second, reveal is that generally speaking, qualitative and quantitative, which I'll show you in a second, insight, is that phonology and orthography, the sound system and the writing system, is really tightly connected in people's minds, and that people draw on their existing experience of language and literacy to make sense of new words and to try and connect to them. So we've got a few different examples. So these were all from Arabic speakers, but quite a few people chose to respond in English. So one person said, I tried to think about how that person say it and guess the spelling upon my experience. So it's really interesting to see that they're just going back into any knowledge that they have to try and make sense of the word, but spelling is key. It's really important to them that they visualize the spelling. And then another person here has got a really good example of connecting the shape to something in the real world. Those who are called famo or vamo, I tried to connect them to the word heard, which is a bit similar to fum in Arabic, saying the shape of those words can be entered inside of the mouth, like fum. And one of the reasons why I'm really interested in this example is because it is clear that this person has been able to perceive the difference between famo and vamo, but they're actually their L1 transfer, their first language transfer, and interference is meaning that they connect those to the same sound in Arabic. So this is really interesting just to see people kind of processing. And then we can see as well another example. I linked the shape of the word with a word or letter. For example, the last letter in the previous question looks like M. So people use their knowledge and experience of what letter shapes are like across their languages to connect with the images. So this was not something that we were expecting, that people would look for letter shapes to connect with. So it's really interesting how people connect meaning and make references between sounds and symbols and images in their learning. And then we also see that people kind of conflate sounds and spelling so that people don't always separate them. So this is one example. So I try to remember the spelling. Oh, I mean the sound. And there's quite a few people who talk about seeing sounds and hearing letters and that not being a clear distinction. And then this person talks about saying they focused on the sound and sometimes they deliberately covered the writing with their fingers. So they were aware that it was having an influence, and this person seems like they were distracted. From the quantitative analysis of the strategies, the main things that came out were producing new words, using Arabic orthography for support, evaluating learning, and analysing sounds and letters. And so we can see from the quantitative analysis as well, that orthography and phonology are tightly related. And interestingly, Arabic orthography usage was kind of all clustered together, whereas English spread out across a number of different categories. And as we'll see, the reliance on Arabic in specific, particularly related to proficiency, and actually declined generally with proficiency. But the thing that I'm quite interested in is that we see with repetition and practicing mouth positions that the use of English to distinguish similar sounds is clustered with these strategies. So and this relates to people's belief that I didn't mention before, but quite a few people talked about spelling is useful for correct pronunciation. And so people directly link their pronunciation to written language, which was for me quite surprising based on some of what we know about the relationship between sounds and letters, especially in English. So how does this relate to performance? So we've seen that performance and beliefs are, there's a distinction there, but what about with strategies? Did that help? So we found that evaluating learning and using Arabic written input both correlated with accuracy scores, but we found that English proficiency was still the strongest predictor, a lot more so than people's strategy uses. There was a predictive element to evaluating where this kind of metacognitive strategy did predict better accuracy, but it was quite a low contribution to the model. And then it actually turned out, like I said, that proficiency predicted the use of Arabic. And so its reliance on Arabic spelling decreased as proficiency increased with English, which is unsurprising maybe. So in summary, what was interesting is that participant beliefs about orthography do not match performance on the task, but they do shape strategy usage. But these strategies have quite little impact on accurate lexical encoding of difficult contrast. So we're talking specifically about difficult sounds here. So what does this mean for multilingual education? I think this is evidence that kind of gets behind a growing body of evidence that you should maybe avoid over-reliance on written input when you're introducing new words, especially when focusing on difficult to perceive sounds and especially when focusing on pronunciation. And it would be really great to spend more time considering whether where written language is likely to help and to hinder in light of target language, in light of proficiency, in light of the language background of participants across the board, English and Arabic participants drew on any languages that they know. And as we've talked about today, the multilingualism is the norm really in reality. And it would be great to, in future research, I would love to explore more about learner beliefs, about language learning and literacy, and encouraging metacognitive strategies and reflection on the relationship between sounds and spellings across languages and how we can incorporate that into classrooms. Here are some references, and it's been a great pleasure to share this with you. If you'd like a version of the slides, you can scan the QR code. Thank you so much.
So, Louise, are you done?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Louise. Very interesting findings, by the way. Sihem was also saying very interesting finding. Thank you for the very informative and insightful presentation, Louise. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So let's now move on to introduce our Amira bin Abdul Qadir. Are you there, Amira? Amira?
Yes, I'm here.
Are you there?
Yes.
All right. So Amira is going to be presenting on trilingual practices, meaning making and yes? Translingual practices. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's translingual. Translingual practices, meaning making and negotiation by languages learners in lingua franca communication. Is that it, Amira?
Yes.
Good. So Amira bin Abdul Qadir, she has been a senior lecturer and researcher at University of Menturi Constantine I since December 2020, and the director of the American Corner Constantine since September 2022. She holds a PhD in modern languages and applied linguistics from the University of Southampton. She has organized and participated in conferences and other academic events in the UK, in the US, Algeria, Pakistan, Mexico, and so on and so forth. She's also a reviewer in the Journal of Languages, and her research interests are intercultural communication, culture negotiation, lingua franca communication, online language learning, and English as a medium of instruction. So without any further ado, Amira, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Hanen, for the introduction.
Thank
you.
So
my talk today is going to be about online lingua franca communication. So I added the adjective online just to focus on the setting which I'm going to present the data from. So as for my outline for this presentation, I will talk about internet-mediated communication and what is an online intercultural exchange. And then I move to talk about the benefits or the reasons why we should learn a language through communication. And then I present the study, the methodology, the sample, and I start dealing with my findings. I end up with discussion and conclusion. As for the terminologies, we hear telecollaboration, e-tandem, e-pulse, key-pulse, and they are terms we use interchangeably to mean online intercultural exchanges. So what are these online intercultural exchanges? According to Robert Odold, they are the activity of engaging language learners in interaction and collaborative project work with partners from other cultures through the use of online communication tools such as email, video conferencing, and discussion. So for me today, I'm going to focus on video conferencing. Okay. So why should we learn language through communication? So language is a social phenomenon, and it needs to be constructed by conversational participants. We were talking earlier about how children acquire languages from their parents, and it is through conversation because children at an early age, they can't write. So this conversation or this communication with their parents help them really build that language proficiency. According to Risager, we do have, in the social view of language, we do have three loci that constitute the language. We have the linguistic practice that comes from the oral and the written exchanges or interactions. Then we do have the linguistic resources, the socially constructed knowledge of language. Then we do have, then we have the linguistic system, which is historically and discursively constructed, which is the norms that we have about the languages, the grammar, things that are really fixed historically. What is communication? It is the exchange of information between at least two individuals through the use of verbal and non-verbal symbols, oral and written or visual modes, and production and comprehension processes. In my presentation, I'm going to use the non-verbal symbols as well. So this is the study, this is the online intercultural exchange. So just to bring your attention to something, this is from my PhD project, but I also run similar project with participants from Indonesia, Vietnam, and Algeria. So this is exactly the same one, but with just the differences in the data, of course. So the design of the study includes a questionnaire which was administered before the start of the exchange. It was mainly to gather some demographic information and to see whether the participants have that multilingual profile and whether they do have any knowledge about the cultures that are included in the exchange. The components of the exchange itself is here, that I call the jury. So the exchange includes a pair, so pairs of participants, two. How they are paired? They are paired according to the findings of the questionnaire, and they are paired according to their linguistic repertoires, which is, so I paired L1 English speakers with Algerian learner of French, learner/user of French and English. And the other group includes L1 speaker of French plus Algerian, or plus L1 speaker of English and learner of French. So when the exchange started, so what I do before the, so I first try to schedule the conversations by sending a doodle link to the participants. They choose the day and the time. And then once the day and the time I confirmed are good for both, I schedule the session. Before the session, before the start, maybe a day before or a few hours before the start, I give them the topic. So that topic is not really mandatory to stick to it for the whole conversation, which takes 1 hour. So they just have it as a kind of a starting point, or if they struggle to find any topics to talk about for 1 hour, they can go back to that topic just to guide them and to keep them talking for 1 hour. Bear in mind that they are strangers and it is quite difficult really to engage them for 1 hour in an online encounter, having video conversation. So for some people, it's a bit awkward. Then when they start talking, I start the recorder, I mute myself and I turn off my camera just to avoid any kind of interruption. And I may to try also to make it as natural as possible. So that exchange was for 4 months, and they had conversations twice a week, one conversation in French and another one in English, and talking about the same topic. For the at the end, after the 4 months, they finished the conversations. So what I did, I distributed the retrospective report just to have the comments, perceptions, and evaluation of the interchange, what they learned, what they didn't like, or what they liked about it, and any takeaways from the exchange. So these are the countries where my participants are from. So the United Kingdom, we do have France, Belgium, and Algeria. And these are the topics. I chose 8 topics which are culture related because I'm focusing on the intercultural dimension. So the first one, introducing ourselves. The second, family gatherings, then neighbors, punctuality, foreigners, women, elderly, and celebrations. So we just give them that prompt, that topic. Okay, in this conversation, you are supposed to talk about this, but feel free to deviate from this topic and don't feel like obliged to go back to it. So these are all the time my instructions. And as I said, each topic is devoted 1 hour long meeting, one in French and the other one in English. So it might sound that this is a task-based approach, but it is not. It is not totally conform to it because I'm not giving them tasks. The topic is just to stimulate the conversation. Now, in this presentation, I'm focusing only on 2 pairs. Louisa, Shema. Louisa is British, Shema is French. These are the, details about them. Then I do have the pair 2, Gracie and Sonia. Gracie is British and Sonia is Algerian. Now, since my topic is about meaning making, translingual practices, and meaning negotiation and so on. So I'm focusing here about seeking assistance, especially that it is a language learning encounter and it is a multilingual one. So here, this is an excerpt from a French conversation between Louisa and Shema. Louisa is British and Shema is French. And these are pseudonames. So she said here, elle parle français, allemand. So here, Louisa is talking about the girlfriend of her brother, and she is trying to tell Shema that she speaks many languages. And then she struggled to say Scandinavian, so she said une langue Scandinavie. And then she kept hesitating and said Scandinavie, and making eye contact with Shema just to seek her assistance. She wanted Shema to correct her, and then Shema stepped up and said Scandinave, which is Scandinavian in French. And then Louisa said, oui, it's Scandinavian, Scandinave. This is the word that I'm looking for. So here we can say that there is the kind of translanguaging, since we don't have Scandinavian or Scandinavian in French, but we do have Scandinavian in English and Scandinave in French. So here she is kind of using her L1 repertoire to find the correct word. And Shema, she could really assist her finding that word. This one is between Sonia and Gracie. So Sonia again is Algerian and Gracie is British. They were talking about something. Sonia would like to talk about something, some kind of pancake, but she can't find the word for it. So here they are doing collective scaffolding. Sonia said, and you have also, it's like a pancake, but it's like thicker and round. Gracie said, I don't know how, I don't know. I mean, I probably know it, but Sonia said, I don't remember how it's called. Then Gracie said, is that a pancake? Sonia said, it's like a pancake. And then Gracie, So here she's asking her to explain more. But it's small and round. The pancake is bigger. She said, right. And then Sonia said, but the round is very small. Gracie like, okay. Sonia said, and thicker, there are holes in it. And she was like using her hands to show the shape. It's like round with the holes. And then Gracie said, pancake. Sonia said, what? And Gracie said, pancake, like the thing that you tried. And she was like using both hands just to show the size and so on. And then Gracie said, yes, yeah. So here, this is a process, not only of meaning making, but also to finding something, the thing that Sonia is trying to explain. So seeking description, seeking description. So all these are the processes that Sonia and Gracie went through in order to collectively scaffold for the word pancake. Afterward, Sonia was asking, how do you eat them, those pancakes? Because she saw them in the supermarket, but she couldn't understand, she couldn't name them, and she couldn't find out how they eat them in England. So she said, and you eat them with jam, I think. So Gracie said, you can have it like with butter or with jam or whatever, really. And then Sonia said, I've seen my flatmates in Canterbury eating it every morning. Gracie said, yeah, have you tried Marmite? And then Sonia said, what's this? And they started laughing. Gracie said, it's like sort of made of yeast. Sorry, what's happening? Sort of made of yeast. And Sonia said, aha. Gracie said, but it's sort of like a spread, but it's like black, basically like slightly browny. It's salty and it's like a savory thing. Sonia said, do you mean marmite? And Gracie said, yeah, Marmite. So here it turned out that Sonia knows the thing, and Gracie was talking about something that Sonia, whenever she sees it, she pronounces it in French, because I don't have time to show you the whole conversation. It's quite long. But then after this, Sonia was saying, there are words, whenever I find them, I just automatically pronounce them in the French way without even bothering to search for the English pronunciation. So this is why she used marmite instead of marmite. Oops. Now, for the feedback, as I said, from the retrospective report, and why I'm just presenting those findings is just because they really, they are quite similar to those of the exchange that I did with the Indonesian and Vietnamese. I will tell you the differences. So this is one of the comments I got from the retrospective report. This is from Shaima, who is from French, and she was the partner of Louisa. She said, this experience really gave me confidence, self-confidence, and also reassurance that I can speak English, and also it's good to comprehend the English culture. And she said that the exchange also gave me the opportunity to create friendships. So self-confidence, knowing, understanding the partner's culture, and also social outcome. So this is one of the benefits of why we should learn languages through communication. Louisa said the experiment was a very helpful and insightful exchange of cultures and languages. I became very close with my partner and learned a lot about her life and her culture. In France, I felt strangely familiar. So after this exchange, surprisingly, Louisa was Louisa's year abroad was in France. So she really find that a very good timing to have that exchange and then go to France for her year abroad. So she said, I felt strangely familiar, which I think was due to our extensive conversations about her family, her customs. We were able to communicate, added a little by online dictionaries, easily enough in each language with one another, with the help of gestures and facial expressions, while the person who was conversing in their mother tongue could also infer and add. The speaker of the foreign language with their sentences and help take them in the directions they wanted. I learned a lot through this experience in terms of vocabulary and cultural differences. So knowing and understanding the partner's cultures, mediators that I used so the mediators are part of the affordances of the online exchange. because it's online, they can use their online dictionaries. Because it is video conferencing, they can use facial expressions and some gestures as well. And they can also build some social networks. So these are for the how they managed the conversations. As I said, I gave them the topics just to stimulate the conversation, just to guide them a little bit. But then each of the pairs that I had have their own way to invest in that conversation. So there are those who focused really, and the topic I gave them was dominant in the conversation. There are others who didn't discuss it at all. So this is how, for instance, Gracie and Sonia used their French conversation about introducing themselves. So there is an opening of, hi, how are you doing? What are you up to this week? And so on and so on. And then they started talking about names, how they name in their countries, if there are any legal restrictions when choosing names. And then they started talking about languages, the languages they speak, how they develop their languages, how languages are spoken in Algeria, how old people in Algeria speak French fluently. And then we had the closing and we planned for the next session. So these are the subtopics. And then we do have Louisa and Shema. So here they saw it as a task, really. So the topic that I gave them was very dominant. So they talked about it for most of the duration of the conversation. And then they talked about Louisa meeting her brother's girlfriend and Shema preparing for her trip to Italy. And then they closed the session and we planned for the next one.
I'm sorry, Amira, to interrupt you. Could you please just sum up in 5 minutes?
Yes, sure. Not much left.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Right, I'm moving those. Now, just to focus on something, how it is good for like not only translingual, but also transcultural competencies. We have here how Shema and Louisa could navigate the self, the local, and the global. So here they were talking about women. So the topic is the 6th one. And they were talking about how women are kind of oppressed in some contexts. So then Shema said, it's really weird because I know it's like that in some countries. It's really restricted for women, but we are in France and we are supposed to be free. So here she was talking about an incident that happened in France. A male lecturer, kicked off a female student, and he told her that you are a female, you are not supposed to be here. So here Shema is narrating this incident. And she's shocked that this happened in her country, France, which is supposed to be open and which is supposed to give women all their rights and so on. So how this is to show how, for instance, stereotypes can be decorticated in order to find the intercultural in their conversations. So here she said, in France, it's we are supposed to be free. And then what Louisa said, I think people get away with it because it hasn't been solved. I don't know, but I think they get away with that because it hasn't been solved everywhere. It's not totally eradicated because there are horrible cases in other countries, like terrible. Obviously, there is a girl. So, and then they started talking about the girl from Pakistan, Malala, and how she's an activist, and she's trying to give females in her country the right to education. So here, this is how they move and how they think that if there is a problem in any point in the world, it's going to affect the whole world. And this is what we all witnessed with COVID-19, I think. Now, as to wrap up my talk, so speakers rely on their shared plurilingual resources to achieve meaning making, to clarify to their partners, and to signal the need for assistance or correction. We do also hear how the plurilingual dimension manifests itself will strongly depend on the constellation of speakers and resources. I have many examples when even the L1 speaker is seeking help from the non-L1 speaker, just because they struggled with some words, with pronunciation, or sometimes even with spelling when they try really to imagine how to put it in the dictionary. So that kind of the plurilingual dimension, it says that the professionally is not really, doesn't really reflect how a person is going to use that language, because in practice, the reality or the context might impose itself in some ways. Then the didactic voice adopted by the L1 speaker is inherently heteroglossy in the sense that the identities resonate with those of teacher and students, expert and novice, which cast the L1 speaker in a position of dominance and the non-L1 speaker in one of subordination. This happened, but not much. And then we do have also the sociocultural approaches and the time periods, individuals and communities, and so on. And we do have the critical intercultural awareness and how the ability to evaluate critically on the basis of explicit criteria, perspectives, practices, and products. We've seen the example of the female students in France. And then we have here how we go through the processes of building up the culture that we have and the languages that we have. And all these are linked not only to our learning experience, but our life experience, and which also going to shape our perspectives and our way of looking critically to things and to incidents. Right, with or without L1 speakers, learners can learn, create learning opportunities, and are motivated to learn. And then restricting the online languages exchanges to some languages and their L1 speakers marginalizes other languages and their speakers. This is why I included Algerians who are neither L1 speakers of English nor L1 speakers of French. And also partnerships. We have to think of partnerships between countries who are a bit underprivileged, and stop looking just at Europe and the context that are used to those kind of exchanges, opportunities. These are my references. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Amira. What you were saying is really compelling, but I'm afraid we are restricted by time. Otherwise, you're most welcome, okay, to speak about your results. So it's very compelling what you presented. Amira, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you so much. So let's move on very quickly to the last speaker, who is Souheila Rabroub. Are you there, Souheila?
Hello.
Hi, Souheila.
Hi. Good afternoon. I'm here.
Good afternoon, Souheila. So Souheila, a few words about you before you start speaking, if you don't mind. So Souheila is going to be presenting on, I think, contiguity. Is that it? That's right, Souheila?
Yes.
Yeah, contiguity effects in learning English as a foreign language from viewing.
Exactly.
Good. So Souheila is a lecturer in the TEFL program at the University of Gijel, Algeria. She holds a PhD degree from the University of York, and her research interests involve second language acquisition, vocabulary learning, learning from viewing, and spacing. Very interesting, Souheila. So, Souheila, the floor is yours. You can start.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me well?
We can hear very well, Souheila.
Good. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes.
Good afternoon.
I'm very pleased to have been invited to this important webinar and be among you today.
Thank you. We're happier.
Yes. So the presentation for today would be as such. I will start with a small introduction and then I would move quickly to the previous research and then elaborate on my study, quickly on the analysis and the methods, and then the important results and some implications that are important to this webinar. I will try to simplify the terms and be as general and meaningful as I could, regardless of your specialty. The webinar is entitled Multilingual Education, Creating Effective Learning Environments. And some of the proposed pertinent issues in the introduction of the webinar are bilingualism, phonology, and vocabulary. In line with this objective, today I'm going to highlight an effective environment for learning vocabulary that we can create in the classrooms, especially for those teaching a language that is foreign or second for the students. That environment is what I termed verbal visual contiguity, and I would explain. So when we watch videos in the foreign language, be it in, for instance, an episode of a drama series, a film, or a documentary, or even a recipe for some cooking, if you are bad at cooking, on YouTube. So we would always encounter words that are new to us. And most probably, these words would be supported with a visual reference, a corresponding image. Sometimes the image, the visual reference, would appear seconds after the word occurs. Sometimes we see the image before and then later we hear the word, and sometimes these two occurs at the same time. So here are examples of visual reference for the word hexagon, appearing in a BBC documentary series. You can see that. Yes?
Suhaila, sorry to interrupt you. Can you share the screen with us, please?
I've been sharing it. No, it's not shared.
Yeah, it's not shared.
Okay, I thought
I was going to ask her because we still have Amira's screen, I believe.
Okay, I will try. I thought
Amira, would you please remove your...
Amira? Amira, can you hear me?
No, I thought I stopped sharing my screen. I don't know if you're... yeah.
Yeah, it's okay, Amira. It's okay now. I think we can see Suhaila's... yeah. No. Still Amira.
Can you try again, Suhaila, please, to share your screen? Because it's not working for us.
Is it shared now?
Not yet. Yes.
Yes. Click full screen.
It is, Suhaila.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
So, all right. So that was the outline. You haven't seen this. It's fine.
No, we haven't.
Okay. Doesn't matter. All right. Is it all good for everyone? Yes.
It's perfect, Suhaila.
Thank you. So where did I stop? In the hexagon. So as I said, have you ever pondered the question of how learning occurs under these conditions? So what are the mechanisms behind learning? Does it matter if the supporting image will remain on the screen for a long period of time? And this is what I introduced in my research as contig duration, based on contiguity and duration. Or is it rather about the frequency, how many times the image will pop up to you in the video, irrespective of how long it is? Or could learning be related to contig ratio, how high or low frequency is relative to the overall existing verbal occurrences? So these are some of the intriguing questions that say that's driven my research. And the question was mostly which construct among these is most conducive to learning, to vocabulary learning in particular. Here is another example for symmetry. This is other examples for symmetry. So this research fits into the broad field of contiguity effects in learning. Contiguity in simple terms means the state of having two things at the same time, close to each other. Psychologically speaking, it is the principle that constant perception of two stimuli together leads to strong association between these stimuli in the mind, based on Hanen 1949. Most of the contiguity research was related to explicit teaching and multimedia learning and instruction. It was based on explicit instruction, and this could be best exemplified in the works of Meyer, for instance. However, in the previous example, it is a process that would take place most often unconsciously, not consciously, and that is the definition of incidental learning. So contiguity effects in incidental learning has been understudied. Current studies on the topic are very few, and they are either purely descriptive in nature, or have some methodological concerns if they are quantitative. There are like 3 studies, and to give them credits. So in my study, I measured the let's see the next one. Okay. So in my study, I measured three introduced constructs using long time spans, 7 seconds and 25 seconds, relative to what has been previously suggested as the optimal length of contiguity effect. When I say time span, is the distance between the word, and the word occurs when the word occurs and when its visual corresponding image appears on the screen. So in the study, participants watched 2 full-length BBC documentary series by Forces of Nature and Wonders of the Universe, and they extend to 8 viewing hours, 8 hours, and it was in the form of second language caption videos. So the participants would watch the documentary series in English language, and they would read at the same time the English language captions or subtitles that are not, we call them captions because they are in the same language. And it is, this occurred like over a 6-week period at 2 weeks interval. So every 2 weeks they would watch 2 hours. So participants were knowledge of 28 target words that were present in the input in the documentary were assessed at the level of meaning recall, meaning recognition, spoken form recognition, and written form recognition. So these are the 4 aspects of vocabulary knowledge that were tested on learners. So the number of participants were 53. In the view group, they were exposed to the documentary series. The control group, they only sat the tests. And of course, they are Algerian university students in an Algerian university. So, and then I measured the contiguity that was present in the documentary series. I measured it, and then I tested the effects of this contiguity on acquisition, on incidental vocabulary learning. I wanted to know whether learners would unconsciously learn words without their awareness, and how the presence of those images affected this learning. Of course, measuring contiguity was not done, it was done with a bit of difficulty because I had to manually observe visual reference that precede or follow a word that occurs. So, and they were like, I have done this for 536 times, which is the number of times these words occurred, were repeated across the episodes of the series. So this is just to explain the experimental tool that took place. First pre-test and then experimental sessions and then the post-tests. Briefly, data were analyzed in Studio with generalized linear mixed effects logistic regression analysis because data were coded dichotomously. So I don't want to talk much about the statistics part, and I don't want to seem today as a positivist, and I will just explain briefly the main results in the study. The findings of the various metrics, which are the vocabulary aspects, show that contig duration, the duration of the visual reference, was the strongest predictor of verbal visual contiguity, while contig frequency and contig ratio were relatively insignificant. That is to say, it's not about the ratio or the frequency, it is more about the duration of the visual representation of the word. So the most promising time frame in capturing contiguity effect is not necessarily the shortest, because previously it has been assumed that this contiguity effect should be in the shortest time span, like no more than 5 seconds. And in my study, I experienced the 25 seconds, and it was the most optimal, better than the 7 seconds. So which is longer than the currently employed time frame in the literature. And yeah. So another important result lies in the powerful effect of images. And that's because during my study, I've created some coding criteria, what makes a visual reference, to judge whether a frame depicts a visual reference for a third word. One should first ask what makes a visual reference. So how could you know, how could you code this image as a visual reference for a word? A source of uncertainty in preceding investigations lies in the obscurity of the distinction and the criteria used during the coding process, especially when we have different parts of speech, when we have verbs, when we have adjectives, it's hard to code types of vocabulary. So, and also when the concreteness rating is involved, when we have abstract words and more concrete words. A more systematic approach would clarify and illustrate with pictures how different visuals were believed to have depicted words with disparate characteristics. Specifically, it is crucial to show how coders identified a displayed image as being of a given type or as having given properties, and these given properties are the most problematic in this type of research. So during the coding of visual reference, I distinguished between strong images and weak images. A weak image is one that lacks the required properties needed for the viewer to believe it is actually there. So there is uncertainty. It's hard to tell whether this image really represents the word that occurred. A visual was coded as strong if it was large enough, for instance, to be noticeable, if it conveyed the meaning accurately, especially in the case of a dynamic image, and if it was immediately perceived as a visual reference for the target word due to its overall observable properties. It was also, if it was small, distant, but supported with non-verbal signs or high visual silencing. The second thing is the weak reference, and they were coded as weak if they had some degree of narrative silencing and was small and distant with distracting images, or if it might not have been straightforward to discern if the image possessed the required properties to be a visual reference. So the thing is, the surprising results in my study was the fact that despite this coding, a powerful effect of images, was resulted, and that we should not underestimate these small or distant images, because they could be able to depict meaning efficiently. Weak images must have been supported by the linguistic context, the narration, and also the linguistic context could have altered or direct learners' attention to the weak images. That's why there was an effect, a positive effect for those images that were coded as weak. They were found to be powerful enough to enhance learning. Also, repetition could play a role as well. And a weak reference could be said to be temporarily weak because it is verbally contextualized and encountered multiple times, so it can turn to a strong image after a moment. It could be weak at first, but then after many encounters, it becomes stronger. So, and also lastly, we should not underestimate the capacities of learners who may, based on the results of my study, they may have a high level of depicting images and how they relate to words. Okay. There were many conclusions drawn from this type of research, but the most important is that the longer an image is displayed on screen close to its word, the more likely its word is learned. And these results were evident in many aspects of word knowledge, but most importantly in meaning recognition tests, when we test meaning recognition. So it is more about the duration than the frequency, and the amount of time an image is displayed on the screen close to its word is positively associated with the acquisition of words. Coming to the part that is mostly relevant to today's webinar, which is the implications, the pedagogical implications of the study. So the study advocates or recommends them to maximize incidental vocabulary learning in the classroom, especially in countries where the learners have less opportunities speaking the language, as the example of learning English in Algeria, where French is more dominant. For English language classrooms, I recommend that teachers devote, for instance, some long, like 90 minutes long viewing sessions in the class every week or fortnight, for instance, based on students' preferences, lexical capacities. This is very important. And as long as the content is engaging and entertaining, extensive viewing does not cause cognitive overload. At least that's what I found for learners of intermediate proficiency in my study. Also, teachers implementing viewing-based approach may prioritize documentaries because they are characterized by great verbal visual contiguity compared to other genres of videos, of TV programs, such as films. And this has also been found by Rogers' 2018 descriptive study. So, as well as the fact that this contiguity has been shown to enhance the incidental picking up of words, of unknown words, as was found in my study.
Leila?
Yes?
Sorry to interrupt, but I'm afraid you have to wrap up. We don't have time. We're running out of time, actually.
Okay, I will quickly finish.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I presented some implications for the EFL classroom, and finally, this implication is also important for the ESP classroom. I will give the example of university students. Although many countries still publish journals in their native language, English is currently the optimal medium to share research findings with other academics around the world. So in the Department of Biology or Economics, for instance, where the content is taught in the native language, let's say Turkish, for instance, there would usually be a program in which English for the specific discipline is taught once every week. So in this class, English for biology, the teacher will introduce a handbook, for instance, of biology glossary, the definition of vocabularies and so on. So here, an effective learning environment could be created by exposing those students to videos and documentaries in which those terms will be encountered again, both verbally and visually, and multiple times and repeatedly. This will help facilitate learning and would make it so much fun. So because we have to finish, in short, documentaries should be used more often because they are educational but entertaining at the same time. And also based on the debriefing survey that I conducted in my study, it is very motivating to learners to learn the language through the documentary series. So this is important not just for the EFL classroom, but also in the ESP classroom. Thank you. That is for today's presentation. And yes.
Thank you so much, Suhaila. Well done. Thank you for this intriguing, actually engaging and highly interesting presentation. Thank you so much. I think we will open the discussion now. So if you have any questions,
yes,
if you have any questions from the audience, so they're welcome to ask their questions, I think, to the speakers. The discussion
yes.
is open. Yeah.
Yes, Hanen. My question is addressed to Dr. Rauda. Dr. Rauda, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So, Dr. Rauda, when presenting your work, you dispelled some myths about raising bilingual and multilingual children, right? And as I am a parent who is raising a trilingual child, I have, Dr. Rauda, let me briefly explain the situation for you so that you can understand me. I have a daughter, and my daughter has 3 years old. And she grew up in an environment where she learned 2 languages as first languages. She learned the 2 languages as first languages. It means she's—
What are those languages? Sorry? What are those languages?
Arabic. Yes, they are Arabic and French. She was a simultaneous bilingual because she has been exposed all the time to these 2 languages, which is not my case. Even though I had a bilingual father, but I could only understand French, but not speak it, because my mother speaks only Arabic. So, you know, I had to, I understand the French, but I do not speak it as my daughter does now. My daughter understands and speaks the French and Arabic. Okay? Okay. And because we are living with my husband's family, mother-in-law and father-in-law, who speak only French, so the communication is only in French. Even myself and my husband have to switch to French in order to be able to speak with them. So the French was the first and the most prominent language for my baby. I remember that the first word she pronounced after mama and papa was in French, and it was de l'eau, water. Yes. Then when she joined the kindergarten and she had some contacts with other babies, now Arabic dominates over. And then when she reached 3 years old, and as I am a teacher of English, I wanted to introduce a 3rd language to her. I admit that I struggled a lot without getting into details, but I could reach this point. And now she is a trilingual child. She speaks Arabic, French, and English, and she understands Arabic and French and English very easily. Okay. So turning back to the myths that you have talked about or dispelled earlier. The first one, you said that the children will the child be confused if they learn more than one language? And with my experience, with my daughter experience, the answer, the true fact is no. No child is confused learning more than one language. I can confirm this. Okay, so be it a sign language or a spoken language or both sign spoken language. Moving to the second myth, you have talked about having having more than one language can cause a language delay, right? Yes, the same thing. With my daughter, she has no delay. When I introduced the third language, she now she can communicate with the three languages easily, no delay, sorry. Moving to the last point, to the last myth, which is mixing between the languages. And here I have a question. No, I have 2 points of view. The first one, I think that part of being multilingual is being able to weave through using languages in different situations, in different registers, right? So I turn back to my daughter.
I can give my notes.
Okay, I turned back to her, to my daughter. Once she said, I give you the sentence. She said, maman. Maman is in French. She said, maman, ateni banana. You know, 3 different languages in one sentence. Maman, ateni banana. Maman in French, ateni, which means give me in English. In Arabic, sorry, and banana in English. I was like laughing because I don't know, it was the first time I hear like 3 languages in one sentence.
Of 3 words, even one sentence of 3 words.
Yes. Then something was disturbing me. I said, maybe I have to try my best to use one language with one whole sentence instead of jumbling up with both the 3 languages in one sentence. And the rationale behind this is that different languages have different grammatical rules, right? And what you want to do is to teach your child the appropriate grammatical rule for each language that you are using. So at that time, I thought that I am doing wrong because I have to whether talk only in English with my daughter or only in French or only in Arabic. No way to mix between the languages because my daughter is mixing the languages. So I would like to have an answer about this dilemma, let's say. And thank you, my dear.
Yes, good. Well, I didn't say mixing. Oh my God, whenever I start to speak, so electricity went up immediately. Good. So I want now just to go to a second way. Good.
Yes.
Well, I didn't say like mixing languages. Well, here it's good in this case. Good. So I didn't say that you should not mix languages. In the case of the child. So the child will mix languages, it's okay. But for you, when you want to expose your daughter or your child to a language, you need to, I said, for example, you do not use the same way with her. So for example, you say, donne-moi a banana, okay? You just mix 2 languages together. In this case, you're not going to reach the level of proficiency that you want from her, yes. So the child, yes, will mix, but if you want to expose her to the language. Well, talking about children are super intelligent in learning languages. I talked about, case study, he was talking 4 languages while he was 4 years old, perfectly. Well, the same way like your daughter, the grandparents, they speak Armenian, the grandma. The grandpa speaks Assyrian. These are minority languages here. And also the mom speaks Arabic and also somebody else speaks Kurdish. So the child speaks 4 languages fluently. Why? Because each one, this is called one parent, one language. Yeah, definitely.
The
So
open
yeah, the
method,
child will mix. Definitely. So the child will mix. But what I said about mixing languages is that the person, I mean, just like you, the parent, if you want her to master the language, you do not mix. I mean, like in the same sentence, you can use, for example, if you want her to acquire Arabic or French and English at the same time, you use English in some context and use French in some context, and this will give you fruitful results. As in the case with your daughter, she's exposed to French, and also she's exposed to Arabic. I didn't ask you about the level in English. What about English? She's perfect in using English. She's 3 years old.
She's not that perfect yet.
Good, that's it. So so she mastered 2 languages because she was exposed in the right way, which is one parent, one language. This is one. I don't know if I just wrote some notes here. What was the third question? The dilemma. Yeah, I mean, what was it? I have to say that children are mastering languages in a perfect way if they are exposed well to each language of them. So yes, I'm totally with you. The case of your daughter, and also so many cases.
You know, turning back to you when you said about the proficiency in English, you know, we have 5 stages of language acquisition. We have the pre-production, then we have the early production, we have the speech emergence, then intermediate fluency, and the advanced fluency. And now because she is 3 years old, I think in English, she is now in the intermediate fluency because the comprehension is excellent. If I talk to her in English, she understands. If she puts a song or a video, she understands. So the comprehension is excellent. She uses complex sentences to share her opinion and thoughts as well. And she has fewer grammatical errors. It's not like the stage of speech emergence, because in the speech emergence from 1 to 3 years, they make the children tend to make grammar errors a lot. She's not the case when they reach the intermediate fluency.
Yes, I think in your daughter's case, I mean, mastering English perfectly is a matter of time. So she's a great, you're doing like raising a multilingual child, not only a bilingual. Yes. So it's a matter of time. She needs time.
Yes. And do you think we are using, you talked about the methods or the 4 ways to raise children. You talked about the OPAL, the MLA, and the time and place. Do you think that in my case, am I using the time and place for raising my child, for raising my daughter? Is it time and place?
And no, actually, one parent, one language, because she's spending too much time. Yeah, sorry.
Because with me, she speaks English. She likes to speak English, and with her father Arabic. And then when she is with her grandmother and grandfather, she speaks French.
Yes, in this case, we cannot consider the parent as grandparents. They are just like a mother and father, because she spends time with her, too much time with her. Am I right? So she spends like 4 or 5 hours a day with them.
Yes,
Nachoua?
you may say so. Yes.
Nachoua?
Yeah.
Yes, Hanen.
Sorry for the interruption, but I think we have to move on to other questions. We have many questions, I think, in the chat box.
Sorry.
Yeah, I know it's very interesting, but
because I'm so interested in this topic as it concerns my daughter, and I know that Dr. Rauda is one of the teachers who is how do we say it? She made studies about this, and she is teaching multilingual children. That's why I am asking her these questions.
Yeah, sorry. I know. Yeah, I know it's very interesting what you were discussing, but I think we still have other questions in the chat box. Okay, so many people are waiting for for the speakers to answer questions they put in the chat box. So shall we move on?
Yes, sure. Yes, move on.
Okay. So Amira? Amira,
Yes.
are you still there?
Hi. Hi again.
Amira, do you see any questions which were directed to you?
Yes. So, for instance, Sihem, she's asking about the topics. So she said, Amira, is it possible, Amira, to tell us on what basis have you chosen these topics? So, first of all, I said, so these topics are not really the main element in my exchange. So they are just to stimulate conversation. As you may have noticed, they are not really that difficult topics, so you can just start talking about them without really thinking twice. So we have introducing yourself in your cultures. How do you introduce yourself to a new person? How you introduce a friend, for instance, to your family? How you introduce a family member to your friends, and so on. So it's not really something very, very difficult to talk about. Also, we have family gatherings. How do you gather? How is it like the culture in your family? Do you gather just over dinner? Do you just gather when you have like a special occasion, and so on? So those topics were not really meant to be a core element in the exchange, but they were just there as a suggestion for the participants, just in case they struggle to communicate with each other. Because as I said, they are foreigners, and they are having that interaction online. It is awkward for many people, and also they are having it like in video conferencing. So the topics are just there. They have a link with, so they have a cultural aspect, and also they are super easy. So these are the bases on which I chose those topics. And then when I started analyzing the conversations, I was really surprised that the participants managed the conversations differently. So there are those who really, in a way, they just followed the topic, and there are others who just started creating their own topics, and they shared knowledge, and they started just talking about them in all the conversations. I hope that answers you, Sihem.
Very good, Amira. Thank you so much. That's clear to me now. So they were just like topics to provoke the discussion, and then it's up to them to elaborate and talk.
Exactly,
Very good,
to stimulate.
Yes, thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you.
So Sihem, shall we try to answer other questions, or what?
I think Iman has raised her hand. Maybe she wants to ask a question. Iman?
Dr. Bilquad as well, she raised her hand, so.
Yes.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all so much for the very insightful presentations. Yeah, it's been great seeing some familiar faces from my home university, Cities to University. It's great seeing you all, and it's great seeing everybody, in fact. Now, my question is mainly related it's mainly in terms of implications of studies and research findings related to multilingualism, and in particular with reference to the Algerian context. Well, Algeria is known to be a multilingual environment. And recently, the Ministry of Education, as well as the Ministry of Higher Education, have started like introducing and implementing reforms that aim to advance the status of English within the Algerian society, or within the Algerian educational institutions in particular. My question is, since for decades now, French has been occupying the position of the first foreign language to be taught to Algerian pupils at primary school level. What challenges do you think the introduction of English would bring? And when we consider the intention of officials to to make of English an alternative of French, or to allow English to take the place of the French language within the educational system. What challenges do you anticipate as researchers actually in the field of multilingualism? And how do you think teachers, parents as well, and learners would be able to overcome these challenges?
Amira, would you like to answer her? I think she raised her hand. Okay, good.
Well, many thanks, Iman, for your question. It's really timely, and we really need to have some answers to it. I actually would like to just share with you the reflections I got from a study day I organized at the University of Montori, Constantine one, with regards to this implementation of English as a medium of instruction in Algerian universities. So I had many teachers attending, and I had students as well. So most of them agreed that, of course, that language policies have always been imposed on people, and we never got the chance to say whether we like this policy or we dislike it. But all over the world, language policies are imposed. So for that implementation, some teachers were a bit skeptical about it. They said, we are already suffering with French, although it's the language of colonization. We know it since, I don't know, 1830 or something, but we're still struggling with it with our students. There are others who said, even if we dislike it, even if we as teachers resist that policy, students will impose their language as they imposed Arabic along with French. So, for instance, in disciplines such as biology, it's usually taught in Constantine in French. But then with the resistance of students and with the lack of French proficiency, they started making pressure on the administration, and then they created, let's say, two main, poles within the faculty of biology. Half of students study in French only, and others, they study in Arabic and French, but mostly in Arabic. And then with time, teachers found themselves obliged to translate, to use materials in Arabic and translate their lectures when they deliver them. So for them, they said, if students like that policy of EMI, English as a medium of instruction, it will succeed because they are the ones who are leading the languages of instructions in Algerian universities. But if there is a resistance, because there are those who claim that nowadays students master English, they speak English, they use English, they are better than their teachers in English and so on. But what is really what is worth considering is that when we link a language to studies, it's not when we link it to something fun. When I link English to listening to music, reading books for leisure, or watching movies and series, is not like when I am going to study with it. So there is that kind of, let's say, controversial views with regards to that implementation or to that policy. And also, perhaps the advantage of English now is that it's not linked to any colonial ideologies in Algeria. So this is something which is different from French, but we still need really to think twice and 3 times, 4 times before really adopting it, because the failure that we witnessed and we are still witnessing with French shouldn't be repeated with English. So this is the least we can do, is to reflect over our previous policies. Yes.
Amira? Thank you so much. Quite interesting what you said. But I'm afraid we have to move on to Dr. Bilfat.
Yes, thank you very much. I just have a suggestion because we are running out of time and it's getting late. I would like to advise all the participants to give their email address so that questions could be addressed to them and they could get the answer. That would be.
I was going to say so, Dr. Bilfat.
Thank you.
Totally agree.
Thank you.
Yes, Hanen, I think it's time.
Yes. Can I give the closing word?
Oh, yes.
Can I give the closing word?
Yes, doctor. Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Our trip today in multilingual topics took us to Saudi Arabia with Dr. Zainab, a Jordanian colleague who spoke of English as the lingua franca. We went to Syria with Dr. Rauda and her encouragement to teach language to children through different strategies. We visited Dr. Haifa from a parallel topic about children in the environment of English and Turkish. In England, with Louise Shepherd, we met the difficulties of Arab learners in pronouncing difficult letters and then mixing up meanings as a van is not a fan. Our stop in Constantine with Dr. Emira made us understand that communication is necessary in order to learn languages and build friendships. Last but not least, Dr. Suhaila in Jijel presented us with terminology related to the impact of images in language learning, like contig duration, contig frequency, and contig ratio, which are surely terminology that we will remember. I would like to thank all the participants on behalf of all that were there as audience, and I would like to thank Dr. Ammar Shaban and Dr. Karim Aish again. Thank you to Dr. Kelkoula, Salem, and Kichou for their good organization. Thank you to the Democratic Arabic Center in Berlin. And we have learned that our trip in multilingual topics is a responsibility as parents and as educators. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Dr. Bilfat.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for everything, really. It has been such an insightful event.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye and take care, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Many thanks to all the speakers and the participants.
Thank you, Hanen. Thank you, Sihem.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nachoua, Kichou. Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Have this off to get without you.
Thank you, Nachoua. Thank you.
Have a good evening all.
Thank you. Bye.
Everyone.
Thank you, Suhaila. Okay, so Aisha, she's here.
Some have left already.
Thank you, Bilhamel. Thank you, Fuzia. Thank you, Iman. Thank you, Kautar. Dr. Rauda. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Wasila.
Thank you, Aisha. She's there.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, she's there. Aisha is there.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So goodbye, everyone. I hope to see you in upcoming events, more events, inshallah, in the future.
Inshallah. Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening, everyone. Thank you so much.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bilfar, Madame Bilfar. Merci beaucoup.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome.